I raised my daughter alone after her mom left us, but 7 years later, I'm not invited to her wedding because her stepdad, who she says is better, is walking her down the aisle. So, I decided to give this special gift to my niece instead, and now my daughter is crying crocodile tears. Hi everyone, my name is James Daniels, 57, male, and I am at a crossroads with my daughter Rosie, 23, female. About 7 years ago, when Rosie was just 16 years old, my wife Linda, 55, female, left us. She didn't say anything, just randomly left. I met Linda in college when I was 22 and she was 20. It was one of those typical love stories where we locked eyes at a party and just clicked. She had this incredible laugh that could light up the room and a way of making everyone feel important. We dated for 3 years, and I proposed to her on a wintry night in a park. It was snowing lightly, and she said yes with tears in her eyes. We were so happy then, I really thought we'd be together forever. We got married in a small ceremony with just our close family and friends. Linda looked stunning in her white dress, and I was the happiest man alive. For the first few years, everything was great. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing we couldn't handle. We even bought a little house in a quiet neighborhood and turned it into our cozy home. Then Rosie came along, and everything changed. She was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen, with her mother's eyes and my smile. Being a father was the best thing that ever happened to me. I remember staying up late at night holding Rosie and dreaming about our future together. Linda was a wonderful mother at first. She doted on Rosie and seemed genuinely happy. But as the years went by, things started to change. Linda became distant. She wasn't the vibrant, happy woman I married. She seemed unhappy, but whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she'd brush me off or get defensive. I didn't know what was wrong, and she wouldn't tell me. We started arguing more and more. I'd come back home from work, and she'd be in a bad mood, snapping at me for no reason. I tried to be understanding and supportive, but nothing I did seemed to help. I remember one day, about a year before she left, she told me she needed some space. She said she felt trapped and needed time to figure things out. I was devastated but agreed to give her some space. She moved into the guest room, and our communication became even more strained. We were like two strangers living under the same roof. Despite the tension, I tried to keep things normal for Rosie's sake. She was a teenager and going through her own struggles. I didn't want her to see the cracks in our marriage. Linda still cared for Rosie, but it was clear she was struggling with her own issues. I thought maybe she was going through a midlife crisis or something, but I never imagined she'd actually leave us. One day, I came home from work and found a note on the kitchen table. It was from Linda, saying she needed to leave and find herself. She didn't give any specifics or say where she was going. She just said she couldn't do it anymore and hoped I'd understand. I was in shock. I couldn't believe she would just walk out on us like that. I felt like my whole world had come crashing down. Rosie was heartbroken. She kept asking me why her mom left, and I didn't know what to say. How do you explain something like that to a teenager? I told her that her mom loved her very much but needed to sort out some things in her life. It was a tough time for both of us. Rosie and I grew closer as we tried to navigate our new reality without Linda. Later, I found out that Linda actually left me for someone else. She sent me divorce papers a few months later. I signed them just to get it over with. Soon after that, she got married to David, 59, male. Now, as a man, my self-esteem was extremely low. There was no denying that Linda left me because David was richer. However, eventually, I got over it. Finding out she left me for someone else was a huge blow. It felt like a knife in the heart. I remember sitting on the couch staring at those divorce papers, trying to process everything. I couldn't believe she had moved on so quickly, and to someone who was frankly way better off financially. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I couldn't provide what she needed. David was a successful businessman. I'd seen pictures of him online, and he looked like he had it all: fancy cars, a big house, the works. I couldn't compete with that. I worked a regular job, just enough to pay the bills and provide for Rosie. Linda had always been supportive of my work, or at least I thought she was. I never imagined she wanted more, that she felt like she was missing out on the luxurious life. When she married David, I was devastated. I felt like I was being replaced, not just as a husband, but as a father too. David was the kind of guy who could give her everything she ever wanted, and that stung. I spent a lot of time questioning myself and wondering what I did wrong. It was a dark period, and I often felt like I was drowning in my own self-pity. For a while, I just went through the motions. I took care of Rosie, went to work, tried to keep things together, but inside, I was a mess. Rosie noticed, of course. She tried to be strong, but I knew she was hurting too. She missed her mom, and it was hard for her to understand why Linda chose to leave us for someone else. Eventually, I realized I had to pull myself together for Rosie's sake, if not for my own. I couldn't keep living in the past and letting it ruin my life. Years passed, and Rosie got more used to life without her mom. She stopped asking questions and just accepted that Linda wasn't around. She focused on her college and friends, and I think that helped her cope. But then, one day, out of the blue, Linda reached out to her. I remember the day Rosie told me her mom had called her. She was so excited but also nervous. She didn't know what to expect, and honestly, neither did I. They started talking on the phone, and soon after, they met up for coffee. Rosie didn't tell me much about their conversation. She seemed happy, but I could tell she was also cautious. She didn't want to get hurt again. I tried to be supportive, telling her that it was good to have her mom back in her life. Deep down, though, I was scared. I didn't want Rosie to get her hopes up and then be let down if Linda decided to leave again. Over time, their relationship seemed to grow. They would meet up occasionally, and Rosie started mentioning her mom more often. She would tell me about their chats and the things they did together. It sounded like they were getting along, and that made me happy. Rosie deserved to have her mom in her life, and I hoped that Linda would stay this time. Things took a turn a few months ago when Rosie told me that she was getting married. She was so excited, and it made me happy to see her so thrilled. She also mentioned that she would be inviting Linda and David. While I wasn't too thrilled about seeing them, I was genuinely happy for Rosie. It was her big day, and I wanted it to be perfect for her. Rosie started planning the wedding with so much joy. She talked about the dress, the flowers, the venue. I was excited to see my little girl get married and start this new chapter in her life. We had a few planning sessions where she shared her ideas, and I offered my help in any way I could. I thought everything was going smoothly and that I would be part of this special occasion. However, about 2 weeks ago, Rosie came to my house saying that she wanted to say something important. She looked serious, and I could tell she was nervous. I thought maybe she was going to ask for advice or tell me something about the wedding plans, but it was something much more unexpected. She sat me down and told me that Linda and David were willing to pay for the entire wedding, but there was a condition. They would pay for everything, given that I wouldn't come to the wedding. I was shocked. I didn't know what to say at first. I just sat there staring at her, trying to process what I had just heard. I told her this was ridiculous and that I was her father. I couldn't understand why she would agree to such a thing. I asked her who would walk her down the aisle if I wasn't there. She said David had agreed to do that. Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. I was hurt and confused.